This is Doug. I'm here with Sam,
Hey everyone.
and today we're going to run through a tournament report of a local Malifaux 3rd Edition tournament that we actually hosted at our local LGS this past weekend.
Yeah, that was a great tournament.
Welcome back to Danger Planet. I'm Doug. I'm here with Sam today, and we're going to be talking in depth about a tournament report for our latest Malifaux 3rd Edition tournament that we did at our LGS this past weekend. It was Gaining Ground 2, and we had 10 players there. Sam was Explorer Society, and the whole day he played as ES. And today I'm going to walk through the 3 rounds of the event, talk to Sam about his master selection, talk to him about his secondary scheme selection, and ask him how he felt each game went. Spoiler alert, the games went pretty well for Sam because he did end up winning the event. But, that's the cart before the horse a little bit. So I guess let's start off at the beginning. So, Sam, you declared ES into it. I know traditionally you're a Bayou player. So what was the thought there?
So I did show up at the store in my Gremlin shirt and Gremlin pajama pants.
Obviously.
But I audibled into ES at the last moment. I've been playing them for the past few months. Not exclusively, but they're my second faction, I guess. They're the first faction I played in Malifaux that's not Gremlins since, in first edition when I had Ophelia and she was still an outcast. I've always kind of loved Gremlins, but I do want to try to explore the other factions. ES are pretty cool, and especially after the power level adjustments, I felt pretty good about playing them. So I bought in.
Yeah, and it's funny because right after you bought in, I was able to buy out a collection of a player who wasn't playing Malifaux anymore, and it was ES, and so we both kind of ended up getting into ES around the same time, which has been really funny. All right, so round 1 of the tournament was break the line on wedge deployment, I think, and it looks like the secondaries were detonate charges, let them bleed, hidden martyrs, deathbeds, and spread them out. So, Sam, help us understand what was your thought process in not only choosing a master and which version of that master, but then going about choosing your secondaries and how to deploy based on your opponent, and kind of walk us through that.
So I picked Jedza 2 for this mission. I really, really like Jedza 2. I think she's very strong. I think she's one of the best deathbeds masters in the game, if not the best. So when I see it in the pool, I always want to pick her.
Help us
I think
understand why. Help us understand why.
so. She has this amazing combo where she can drop a geode with her bonus action as a shockwave, so that can maybe ping somebody. She can then use dredge up on that geode to push it right up next to an enemy model, in fact, into the enemy model, hitting them for a point of hazardous damage, getting a trigger to drop a scheme marker next to it, and then taking an attack through it, and her attack can do a minimum 4 irreducible damage. So you can do 5 damage that your opponent can't do anything about. 1 ping from the pushing the geode into them, and then 4 irreducible, plus maybe an extra point of damage if they failed the shockwave. And she can do this from downtown. Like, she can theoretically double walk, drop a shockwave 8 inches away, and then push it another 4 inches. So it's very hard to hide from her. And if your opponent has any fairly weak, significant models, you can just blow them up and instantly score deathbeds.
All right.
She drops the marker, she drops the scheme, she does the killing all in 1 activation.
Which you have actually also done to me while I was playing my Seamus crew. Very rude,
Yeah, it's
by
a lot
the
of
way.
fun.
Very rude.
The other schemes I think are also reasonable for her. Detonate charges and spread them out. Both benefit from the fact that her crew is actually pretty good at dropping scheme markers. You have Ostera and Twiggy. You have the Damned who can leap and do it, and you of course have the scheme marker that she can drop from her trigger on dredge up. And then with Let Them Bleed and Hidden Martyrs, these are schemes that are very much about killing. Jedza 2 is very killy, and she's also got quite a bit of healing in her keyword, so she's good at keeping her own models alive for Hidden Martyrs until you need them to die, or keeping your second martyr alive, and also denying Let Them Bleed by healing. So I felt very good about her into this pool. My opponent was Paul, who is actually new to our meta. He's from up in New Hampshire, and I had no idea how good Paul was. Total blank slate. So I went into this assuming, very competitive game. And he declared Brewmaster 2, which
Oof.
is a pretty powerful master.
Yeah.
And also pretty well suited to this pool, I think. Brewmaster 2 is pretty good. He had a bit of an unusual Brewmaster 2 pool in that he had instead of 3 monks, he had Moonshinobi. And he had, instead of taking fingers, he used a whiskey gammon, and a tanuki. So that's a little bit different from what I'm used to. I think the monks are more powerful, but the Moon Shinobi do have things to recommend them. Specifically, the fact that they have Drunken Gremlin Kung Fu means they don't really need a lot of resources to work, because if you can get distracted on them, it's like free focus. And if they beat you by just a little bit, they get a positive twist instead of a negative twist to their damage. And if they beat you, if they match you exactly, they get a double positive to their damage, which is horrifying. They do a lot of 4 damage punches. So they're very strong. They are lacking some of the survivability that the monks have, and I also think that chi is just such a powerful utility thing, and they also don't have the built-in stagger on their drunken stumble. On their their bonus action to drink. So they do have some downsides, but they're not useless. So anyways, and he also had 12 cups of coffee on the brewmaster himself, which is really horrible to
The
deal with.
best upgrade in my opinion in the game.
It is so good. So, anyways, I picked deathbeds for the reason I already said, and I also picked spread them out because Brewmaster 2 likes to bubble, and I didn't think he'd be able to deny my spread very effectively. He also didn't have fingers who eats scheme markers. So he basically deployed pretty standard for Brewmaster. I was expecting him to do the standard turn 1 Brewmaster play where he is basically having all his guys feed drinks to each other, and that's not what he did. He pushed up the board really aggressively. He actually had 2 of the break the line markers on my side of the board turn 1, and he had a guy in position to flip the third one almost immediately. And I was not ready to do that. So I had sent the damned up the right flank to basically contest 1 marker, and he didn't even bother contesting that one. So I knew I had a little bit of breathing room because the damned can easily flip the marker turn 1 or 2. But by turn 3, I was going to need to steal one of the markers that he was already investing AP and pushing, which was tricky. But he did push Shoujo up a little too far. And so turn 1, I was able to just blast her with Austera and Twiggy for a severe using the puncture trigger. And not kill her because she's incorporeal, but knock her down pretty low. And that really kind of got him. Now, he was very aggressive with his whiskey golem. He sent him right up the middle, and he killed my lamplighter pretty fast.
Which is annoying because I feel like that
yes.
lamplighter offers you a lot of tactical flexibility in terms of being able to interact in a lot of interesting ways with, like, primaries. I've seen
Yes, and that's where a lot of my healing comes from too. So it was
Yeah.
annoying to lose him. He managed to light 1 lamp before he died, at least.
Light
But
one up for the homies before he goes down.
so what I did was I sent the Grave Goo off to contest the other marker, besides not the marker that my damned was on, and then I sent pretty much everyone else right up the middle. And I used the Kurgan to kind of fling Jedza up. I should probably mention my whole list at this point. It was Jedza, Sophie, obviously, Lamplighter, the Kurgan, Austera and Twiggy, Mikhail, and the Damned. So I was a little lighter on soul stones than I normally am, but
How many stones did you have?
I believe that list has 4 stones.
Yeah, that's I usually see you play with 6 or 7.
But with Jedza, I actually don't mind, because one of the big things I use stones for is to prevent damage on my master, and I don't actually feel the need to prevent damage on her because she heals herself so incredibly effectively.
Yeah, and
with
she has
life leech.
Life leech, hard to wound. Yeah.
Yep, and the hard to wound, so I'm not that worried about her. And then the other thing is that you often soulstone for cards, but Austera and Twiggy can just stone for cards for 1 AP every turn. So I felt comfortable not having a huge stone pool on this. So what I did was I summoned a Moorwraith early on, because you always want to summon a Moorwraith turn 1, which turned out to be a good decision. And Moorwraith did a lot before he died. Mostly I was just trying to slam into the middle of the board and scrum up with Jedza. So I obviously scored deathbeds turn 2 pretty much exactly the way you expected. I think I was Shoujo that I killed with Jedza's activation. I just did the thing that Jedza does. And beyond that, I sent Mikhail up to basically contest the golem and the other things he had in the middle of the board. And Mikhail took a bit of a beating, but he does have armor, which helped. And I was also able to cleanse the poison off of Mikhail using his shrug off action, which was really helpful because you really don't want to be poisoned against Brewmaster. He pushes you around.
Yeah.
And also, every time Mikhail hits somebody, he heals. So he was able to kind of keep himself topped off and also trigger my chronicle abilities over and over and over. Because every time he heals near Jedza, he gets shielded, which then makes it harder for him to take damage. It kind of cycles. So in the middle of the game, the attrition match was really favoring me. He killed the Lamplighter, but Mikhail got pushed out past his golem using Jedza's lost knowledge, or not lost knowledge, it's not off the path. It's her lead. What is it? Her push, draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards, push based on the value of the cards discarded.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about. I don't know the exact name for it yet because I don't have enough reps with her yet, but I know the ability you're talking about.
Off the path.
Yeah.
So I pushed him up and I got him into the kind of squishy back line, and he just went nuts. He smashed into a Moonshiner, and he blasted using his trigger that generates blasts onto the Whiskey Gamin and the Tanuki, and he killed them all. This was several attacks. It wasn't just a single attack, but I mean, he's really, really strong. He has that extremely powerful, 3, 4, 5 sword with the blasts.
Yeah.
And he's
Man,
stat
before
6.
the nerf, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I know.
Holy yikes. With the 2-inch reach.
And yeah, Jedza herself was doing a really good job just using her irreducible. I had one horrible activation where she was out of position and I needed to dredge up, and I black jokered my dredge up, and you can't try again because you can only target a given marker once per activation.
Yeah.
So that was really bad. I had to fling her into the middle with the Kurgan after that, which then put her within Brewmaster range, so she was no longer able to use her bonus action to generate geodes. But he wasn't able to remove any of the geodes I already had, so I wasn't in danger of not scoring deathbeds second half. I just pushed the geodes onto the other side of the board using dredge up, and then drop ski markers next to them.
Yeah.
Ultimately, what it came down to was that once we really got into the scrum, my crew fought a lot better than his did, especially when the golem was dead. The golem is not super hard to kill because its defense is mostly that it has armor, and guess what? Irreducible damage doesn't care about that.
Yeah.
So I irreducible slapped it to death. And I just picked off his Moonshiner. One of them I swallowed with the Grave Goo, and then while it was still in the Grave Goo's tummy, I smacked it with Sludge Strike and killed it.
Rude.
Which you can do. You can digest them. And so by the end of the game, he only had Brewmaster left. So he was able to get detonate charges because of Brewmaster's Drunken Clarity, letting him drop scheme markers from his guys or from my guys, which was
that ability's
cool.
Nuts. It basically lets
really
you
good.
complete almost any secondary in the game.
Yeah, most marker schemes you could just do them.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't playing monks, he didn't have to load his crew up hard with poison, which meant he had a ton of AP free to just do stuff. So I do think that his crew was less powerful than a crew of 3 Fermented River monks with 20 poison each would have been, but he had a ton more AP to play with than he would have had if he had been trying to do that, especially master AP, which are very valuable. So I don't think that his decision was like clearly wrong. It's just not the way I play Brewmaster.
Yeah.
One thing that was funny also is that at one point I hit the Whiskey Golem with an Entomb, and the Entomb, the enemy gets a -1 to their duel to resist it for each type of non-shockwave marker within pulse 3 of it, and the Whiskey Golem was within 3 of a corpse marker, a scrap marker, a lamp marker, a strategy marker, a scheme marker, and a geo marker. So it was not passing that duel. Yikes. It just wasn't going to happen. So that was
what was
fun.
The score at the end?
The final score of the game was 7-2. He was able to keep me off the strategy for 1 turn. Like I said, I could not invest enough AP to flip markers over the center line, or 7-4. Sorry. But I completed all my schemes. He was able to score 3 on the strategy and 1 on detonate charges. He was not able to score Let Them Bleed because I was able to just top off my crew with healing at the end of the game.
And you just beat him in the punch you harder race.
Yeah. He managed to score a lot of strat points, especially because he flipped one of the markers more than 8 inches from the board, but he was not, beyond that, he was not really able to do what he needed to do.
Okay. So you're out of round 1. You got a pretty decent win. And then we're heading into round 2. And your best friend Doug bails you out of the tournament in epic hero fashion.
Yeah, so in that morning, Doug, by the way, Doug had been trash talking me on this tournament for weeks.
It's true.
And then told me he wasn't playing.
I think the best thing is, but can we read him the hyperbolic time chamber trash talk? Because that was the best one I had.
Post it in the video. Like literally post the screenshot.
I will, so that everyone can see it. I will do that.
And my response to it.
I will.
Anyways, so I was playing round 2. I was playing Felly, and Doug this morning had told me, "Hey Sam, I have Cadmus too. Do you want me to go get it?" And I was thinking about it because Doug lives pretty close to the store. And I was thinking about it. I was like, nah, I don't think I need to. And then I look at round 2 and I'm like, Doug, I need Cadmus too. So we get in my car and we drive to Doug's house and we grab Cadmus 2. And then we drive back and we are 10 minutes late. And Brandon, who was running the tournament, was very cool about it. And everyone was cool about it. And I played Cadmus 2, which is a notoriously complex and difficult keyword that I've literally never touched in my life.
Yeah.
So
And was
round
playing
2,
wrong, which we'll talk about later.
and was playing wrong
Yeah.
in ways that both helped and hurt me, but
Yeah.
we'll get to that.
Yeah.
So in round 2, the strategy was turf war, and the schemes were breakthrough, catch and release, let them bleed, assassinate, and spread them out. And that's just a huge Cadmus 2 pool for a few reasons. First of all, that's a really AP intensive pool. Breakthrough requires you to take a lot of walk actions and then interact. Spread them out requires you to take a lot of walk actions. Turf war can be very AP intensive because you have to keep flipping and reflipping those markers. And the others are kind of killy schemes, so it's less, it's more just rewarding you for playing the game.
But hold on, devil's advocate moment here. You're taking the kids into turf war. That's a lot of small targets.
That's true, but it's also a lot of insignificant targets. Like, I don't care if he kills my nests. I don't care if he kills my eyes and ears. I just don't care.
Fair, but your master
sure, but the kids are not actually tougher than most minions. They're 8 stone models with a really strong defensive trigger and a bunch of wounds and the ability to use soul stones. So I don't think it's that fragile.
Okay, fair enough.
So I was playing into McCabe 2. And so I took what I think is my ideal list right now for Cadmus 2. I took Cadmus 2, so obviously the 3 kids and the 2 nests. I took Meredith Stanley with Flush with Cash. I took the Archivist. I took Kavatica. I took the Night Silk Creeper. And I took 2 Eyes and Ears. And finally, I took Calypso because Assassinate was in the pool, and I figured I'd put the leader kid in Calypso and just keep him safe.
Yeah, let's be honest with one another, right? Calypso and Cadmus go together like peanut butter and jelly, pretty much.
Basically.
That's just a great combo. And okay, Art, for the uninformed Sam, why don't we just run through that interaction really quickly?
So the reason that's really strong is that one of the things about the Cadmus kids is that you have 3 of them, so you have 9 master AP. To dial back on that a little bit, they don't have a bonus action. However, if they're in Calypso, they could use Calypso's bonus action onward. So if you have a Cadmus kid in Calypso, Calypso can walk 3 times during its activation, and the kid can walk 4 more times. So you can go 28 inches across the board, ignoring terrain and vertical distance while moving. And you can get anywhere you need. The kids are a little fragile, as Doug said, and Calypso keeps them safe. And then any of the kids in Calypso at any time can use a bonus action to pop out and then continue their activation. So it's a really cool combo. It is not particularly fair, but I am not interested in playing fair. I'm EXO in a tournament.
Yeah, reasonable.
So I'm playing against Felly. I decided to pick Breakthrough and Spread them out because if I'm playing this extremely AP intensive scheme pool that requires me to do it, I'm playing a crew that's really good at generating AP, moving across the board, interacting. I'm gonna go for the interacting schemes. And I also didn't really want to deal with catch and release because McCabe was not playing any henchmen because he wasn't playing Sadir. He was playing the Emissary. He was playing the Corpse Curator. He played a Botanist. He played a Huckster. And he played a Cryptologist. So he wasn't playing any henchmen, which automatically means with catch and release, I have to stick them next to McCabe, which is not a place anyone wants to be. He's pretty scary. And with Let Them Bleed, I just didn't really feel like I was going to want to get into a big fight with him. It just, I don't know. I don't want to have to reduce the Emissary to below half its health. That's a lot of work.
I also think, so I agree with everything you're saying. I also think the core, if I were to look at this matchup, I'd be like, oh man, a bubble debuff crew. Oh man, an AP intensive pool. I'm going to run away and just do all these AP intensive things and try to outscore it. At least that's where my mind would go. I don't know if that's how you thought about it.
That's pretty much what I was planning to do. So first turn, I unpacked. I think this benefits from me having just sort of thought about the unpack a lot. So even though I've never done it, I was able to unpack pretty smoothly. I was, using the Archivist's Leap, Siphon Power to build in this the suit, Siphon Powering off of an Eyes and Ears, which was then going to heal from Meredith Stanley. I used Playthings to push my whole crew up. I sent basically one of the Cadmus. I had the 2. It was a flank deployment. So I had one of the markers in my deployment zone, but the other, and one in his deployment zone, and the other 2 were kind of in the corners, plus one in the center. So I sent the nests to the 2 markers that were in the corners, and I basically sent one of the Cadmus kids towards each of them, one of them being the one in Calypso, and everyone else kind of went up the middle. I set up a what I thought was a pretty clever sort of way of moving models around. I used the Archivist's Dust and Cobwebs to drop a web marker at the maximum distance up, then used Seize Prey to jump to it with the Creeper, and then the Creeper would spit another marker backwards towards Meredith Stanley, which she could then absorb to grow one of my Eiseniers. The reason I hire 2 Eiseniers is I intend to grow them into Berserker Husks on turn 1 and 2, and I need to hire them so that they will be able to interact with markers.
Yeah.
So I did that happened. The stuff I just described happened. I moved up the board. My opponent very smartly got the glowing saber on McCabe, so his 3/3/4 melee attack would ignore all the defensive tech in the game. So he decided.
You mean the lightsaber?
Yeah, the lightsaber, the light whip.
Yeah.
So he sent his master to go kill Calypso because I had sent Calypso way out there. I thought he might be going for assassinate. I wasn't sure, but he had the corpse curator with him. So he went out, he black jokered one of his attack flips against Calypso, which is probably the only reason that Calypso lived to the end. He didn't actually live, but it took 3 AP instead of 2 to kill Calypso. But he killed Calypso. It was never going to not happen. That put his master way out there though. And one of the things I did turn 1 was I kept using the Will of the Many ability, basically the Obey, on Kavatica to draw cards and also to move him up the board. So by the time Kavatica activated, he already had a focus and he had taken 2 walk actions, or 1 walk action, but he had also been playthinged up. So he was pretty far out there. So very, very first thing he was able to do is stagger the emissary and also get the trigger to push him away. So his emissary was way out of position. He was staggered and he was pushed 2 inches back into his deployment zone. And that was after the emissary had activated. So that meant his second turn activation, the emissary had a hard time. He couldn't get up close to McCabe. So he killed one of the Nexus kids, and he also brought the curator over to drop his little hazardous terrain marker that he makes on the Nexus kid. And I saw McCabe standing there, and I was like, I just need to kill this jerk. So I just basically started shooting him. I started shooting McCabe with Drain Life. I hit him with Drain Life, and I put a Parasite token on him, and that sucks because once he's got a Parasite token on him, I'm going to keep hitting him.
Yeah.
And if the Parasite tokens are only, you can only trigger that. Why
don't we explain how the Parasite tokens work, because it's so core to.
So the Parasite tokens are a big thing that Cadmus does, and with Cadmus 2, what they are used for is when an opponent has a Parasite token, if they make a duel, you may discard the Parasite token from them after they have chosen whether or not to cheat. And cheated,
which is key.
Going to,
after
and reduce their duel total by 2.
Yeah.
And so what that means is you can attack somebody, and the kids have a ranged attack called Drain Life, which is a 2/3. It's a stat 6 against willpower, 2/3/4, that has a built-in trigger to once per turn per Cadmus kid give them a Parasite token. Also, the first time someone gets a Parasite token each turn, they take a point of damage, and a friendly model within 4 inches of them. Sorry, not the first time each model gets a Parasite token each activation.
Yep.
Each model, each activation.
Yep.
They take a point of damage, and you heal a point within 4 inches of them.
Yeah, it's a pulse for heal 1.
It's not pulse. It only hits 1 guy.
Yeah, sorry, that's what I meant. It pulses out a 4-inch heal 1 to a single target.
Yeah, it's a single target.
Yeah.
So what I did with that was, he also had Desper LaRue. Don't want to forget Desper. So he had Desper out there contesting the marker, but I couldn't really do anything against Desper, so I didn't really try. He attacked one of the nests with his hidden blade, and I was like, oh no, I take some damage. The nests are not they have a ton of health and they can heal themselves, so I wasn't worried about it.
And they're hard to wound.
Yes. Anyways, so he gets McCabe out there, and I just start shooting him with Drain Life. And once I hit him with Drain Life, each subsequent kid can then easily hit him with Drain Life. I was also I had a 13 crows in my hand on turn 2. So Kavatica was able to just get in there and stab him with his cane and hit an injured on him. And that is huge because once he's injured, his willpower goes to 4. Now, he has that 5-inch aura of all my attacks being at -1 to hit him. So he was not able to. So it wasn't like I was attacking a stat 6 against 4, but I was attacking a stat 5 against 4. And I was also able to position one of the Cadmus kids to be exactly 6 inches away from him. So she was attacking a stat 6 against 4. So I started hitting him. And once I had the Parasite tokens, I kept hitting him. And that also healed my models because every time they hit with Drain Life, they heal. It also pinged more damage on him. And finally, with the last activation, he was able to eventually get the emissary up next to him, but he pitched all his cards to not be hit, to not be targeted, to take the hit. And so then when he ran out of cards, I tagged McCabe with the Night Silk Creeper's action that stuns and staggers him. Stunning McCabe,
his Caterpie ability.
Yes, he used String Shot.
Yeah.
And that stun is a really huge deal because McCabe actually does have the ability to clear conditions and heal himself, but it's a trigger.
Ooh, get wrecked.
So when I hit him with Web Strand, he could no longer do that.
Yeah.
So that was a pretty big deal. He didn't die because he spent soul stones, and because you only get one parasite token per Cadmus Kid per activation from Drain Life because it's a once per turn trigger. So I wasn't able to kill him, but I was able to damage him pretty badly and stun him. So then he activates. He attacks Kavatica. He is not able to do that much against Kavatica because he hit him, but Kavatica has an ability that when an enemy model with conditions attacks him, he takes one less damage. So Kavatica was only taking 2 damage per hit, and I was able to make one of the attacks missed. So he hit him twice. Kavatica took 4 damage. Ow, ow, ow! That hurts. Whatever. Unfortunately, he was then stuck, and I could then just like pound him with the Cadmus kids. So again, he took the hit to the extent that he could, but he didn't have infinite cards, especially since he had spent some on getting there with attacking Kavatica. So I just eventually was able to kill him, and because I killed him after hitting him with the trigger, I turned him into an Eyes and Ears,
Yeah.
and that was a lot of fun. Meanwhile, elsewhere on the table, I had gotten my Berserker Husks. Desper LaRue scored breakthrough pretty easily. There's very little I could do about that. He sent he sent a Huckster to try to jump over using Secret Passage to score it, but I was able to actually deny one of his Secret Passages by putting a Parasite token on him and then cashing it in to reduce him below the TN he needed. So he wasn't able to get over to flip my marker, which he was trying to do, and I sent a Berserker Husk after him, and the Husk almost just straight up killed the Huckster. He just Black Jokered the damage once, so the Huckster lived. But meanwhile, I was just kind of cleaning up the rest of the board. I had my Berserker Husks in the middle. I had the Archivist in the middle. He had his Botanist out there, and he was fully grown from eating scrap markers. But
Ooh, he's a big boy botanist.
I couldn't really. It was sort of like, who cares? Like, the Botanists don't do that much damage, and they don't mind me. So
Yeah.
I was able to just sort of lock him down and engage him, and then not really have to worry about him anymore. I couldn't move him, but I could deny him from being able to interact with the center marker. And meanwhile, I was just using Seize Prey to just like launch the Nightsoul Creeper into his deployment zone to score breakthrough. And also, really cool thing, by the way, when you use the Obey I mentioned that the Cadmus kids have, it has a trigger that says the target can ignore its insignificant ability. And it doesn't say they ignore their insignificant ability while resolving the action. It says they ignore their insignificant ability for the rest of the turn until the next start phase.
Yeah, which
so
is
I was able to get
crazy.
both of my nests with that ability, which meant they could then just happily take the interact action. And that meant they could flip the turf war markers in the corners, and it meant they could drop scheme markers in the corners, which were important for me because I wanted to score spread them out.
Yeah. That ability is I think probably the best ability those little rapscallions have.
I mean, everything they do is great.
Yeah.
Now, one thing
They're
that I
good
do want
kids.
to point out
They're good
is
kids.
that when you will of the many a target that is insignificant, it does not get to interact with the will of the many action because it doesn't lose insignificant until the trigger goes off, which happens after. Actually, no, never mind. Other way around, because you always take generated actions after you resolve triggers. I played that wrong. I should have been able to interact even more than I did, because you always resolve generated actions after you resolve the ability. Oh man, see, every time I look at these cards, they're better than I thought they were.
The kids are
So
crazy.
these guys are great.
I
Yeah,
yelled
they're
at
really,
you
really
for
good.
like 2 months about how crazy
Yeah,
Cadmus was.
I didn't say they were bad. I just wasn't as excited as you were, and I was wrong. They're great.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that ended up being a win for me, 8-2. There was very little Felly could do to stop me from just completely scoring all the markers, dominating the board. It was very demoralizing for him. He was not happy about it.
Well, but Felly is also Felly is, to be fair, Felly is our good friend. We actually travel with him to tournaments. He's a very good Malifaux player. I think it was also just maybe the first time he had also even seen Cadmus 2 piloted, or maybe the second time total. But that crew is hard to beat. It's a lot of AP. It's a lot of models. Before you spend any soul stones, you get 3 masters and 2 totems. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's 37 wounds.
Yeah.
that are all either hard to wound or soulstone users. So it was pretty nasty.
Yeah. So that one was an 8-2 win for you.
Yep.
So you're going into round 3, and you're basically going in against
Adam, who
presumably
is
Adam, and playing
really,
for
really
the
good at
win.
Malifaux.
Yeah, Adam is an
So
excellent Malifaux player. Adam is part of one of our
partner
partner
podcasts.
podcasts. They're called The Boring Conversation. They're actually featured on a bunch of our faction focus. We do the faction focus series with them, so you guys should check that stuff out. But Adam is an excellent player. Before showing up to our LGS, he had won the last 2 tournaments he'd been in, and he was a staple at the top tables at like Nova and Captain Con and basically major tournaments. So this guy's good.
Mhm. And Adam and I, before this, were 1-1-1 against each other. I beat him at Captain Con playing Zip into Pandora. He beat me playing Zoraida and Pandora into Brewmaster 2. And then we got a draw playing Zoraida and Pandora into Brewmaster 2.
Yeah,
So,
and he plays mostly. Well, so I've talked to Adam. Adam has an interesting perspective. He says every year he changes factions. So
mhm,
this year he's been on Neverborn all year, basically. So he was also Neverborn for this round, and I
mhm,
believe he declared Euripides 2.
he did.
Um, and I went over to you to grab Cadmus to be like, hey, can I get the models back? And you like showed me on the text. You're like, I'm gonna probably declare that, right? And then so
Yeah,
you
yeah. He
ended
was
up
like, "Oh,
playing
you're
this.
definitely going to declare Jedza," and I was like texting to Doug, like, "I'm going to declare Cadmus, but I don't want to say it out loud, so just leave them."
Yeah.
So, anyways, yeah, this was Corrupted Leylines, Claim Jump, Research Mission, Outflank, Hidden Martyrs, Vendetta. I think that is a great Cadmus pool. They're good at Research Mission because they can make webs. They're good at Claim Jump because they have a lot of out of activation movement. They're good at Outflank. They're good at Vendetta. Not awesome at, but they're okay at it. I think they're actually surprisingly good at Vendetta because guess what? You can declare the Cadmus kids as your Vendetta model because it says non-totem. Normally, you don't declare your master because you can't declare the enemy master as a Vendetta target, and the target has to be at least the same cost as your master or higher. And there's very few non-masters that cost the same as masters, but the Cadmus kids cost 8 stones each. So you can declare them as your Vendetta target. It rules. Uh,
It rules.
so I picked Research Mission and I picked Vendetta, and then I played exactly the same list as last time. And he played Thune, the Gurion, well, obviously Euripides and the Primordial Magic, Thune, a Gurion, a Cyclops, 2 Gigants, and the Damned. Very straightforward Savage list. So this was a very close game. He pushed up very aggressively early on. I was expecting him to try to get some blast attacks on my crew because a lot of his crew has very powerful ranged attacks that blast. He didn't do that. I spread out pretty effectively, but he still could have gotten some good blasts, but he was focusing on other things. So he moved his Gigants up, and I just got really aggressive. And I did something that ended up being a huge deal for later in the game, which is that I really viciously went after his Gigants. And I think turn 1, I took one out, but I took it out with poison. And it turned out it was a hidden martyr. Womp womp. I think it might have been turn 2 that I actually killed it, that I like officially that it died, but it died to poison because his whole crew is hard to kill. So all I had to do is knock them down and poison them and then ignore them for the rest of the turn. That was big. It denied him effectively both points on hidden martyrs because by the end of the game, the only thing he had left was Euripides. So he had no hidden martyrs points. He had taken research mission. I was able to deny his research mission because he moved the damned up to do it, and I just killed the damned while it was on my side before the end of the turn. However, that meant I only got 1 vendetta point because I kept trying to hit the damned with the kid who had the vendetta against the damned, and I don't know if he like knew that I had vendetta or something, but he sold out to make those attacks miss.
Well,
He
I've
was
seen.
doing
To be fair,
everything.
I've literally seen Adam make big brain like super
No,
galaxy brain
I
plays
don't put
like
it
that.
past him.
Yeah, I
I
don't
don't put
put
it
that
past him,
past
but he
him.
was cashing in everything to make like I couldn't get a single. All I needed was a single hit on the damned with the Cadmus kid, and I couldn't do it. So for one turn, I just let the damned live. I like didn't go after it with a berserker husk because I wanted to see if I could score both halves of vendetta. But then he leapt the damned and ran it way the hell over into my deployment zone, and I was like, okay, so he knows I have vendetta on it. He's not going to let me score it, so I just need to kill it. So I just killed it. Ultimately, though, what it came down to was I killed the Gurion, who was his stone carrier on turn 2, and that put the stone on Euripides. And he could not spare the AP on Euripides to move him around, so he ended up getting only 2 points on the strat, while I got all 4. Um, so that was a pretty big deal. He also got 1 point on so I'm looking at this. No, he got 2 points. I think I'm trying to remember what the turnout was, the outcome was, because I have it written down as 6-4. He got 2 points on the strap. He got no points on hidden martyrs. Um, he got 1 point on research mission. So I think this might have actually been a 6-3 game. And I did the math wrong. But Adam, if I'm wrong, you just correct me. Um, Anyways,
If he's
most of this
wrong, yell
game,
at him in the comments,
yeah.
Adam.
Most of this, he did manage to frozen trophy some of my dudes. I was able to free the archivist because I just have so many AP to walk around and do stuff with him. I had jammed him really hard with my nests early on. He stuck one of them in ice and we just forgot about it all game long. And then the other one he killed pretty early, killed at turn 1. But I killed as I said, I killed a gigant. I killed the Gurion because I red jokered the damage against it with a ranged attack of some kind, I believe. And knocked it to hard to kill, and then it just died to poison. I eventually killed the Cyclops by just rapid fire drain lifing it. And like like putting a parasite token on it and then taking the parasite token off and then hitting it with a different kid, putting a parasite token on all the standard way you kill things. He was being very effective with Avalanche and making me take a lot of tests to not take 3 damage in an AoE, which kind of sucked. But Meredith Stanley was helping keep my guys alive. He also this is one area I messed up. On like the 4th turn, I tagged Thune twice with Rancid Transplant, which should have been Poison 4, Injured 2, and we recorded as Injured 4, Poison 2. Which meant all my attacks for the rest of the turn would just instantly hit it. I don't know for a certainty that would have actually changed the outcome. I know for certainty it wouldn't have changed the outcome of the game because this is not a 1-point game. And I don't know if it would have actually changed whether Thune would have lived through the turn because 2 reasons. First, because I way overkilled Thune. Like he already had a lethal dose of poison on him when I took an extra attack just to kill him just because, and I had extra AP left. And second, if I had given the proper amount of poison to him, he would have been over the threshold to take more poison damage. So I think Thune was toast no matter what I did, but that one's on me. I was playing it wrong. But I was also playing something else wrong. We intimated this earlier. For the entire day, I thought that Will of the Many was take a non-charge general action because so many of those abilities say target takes a non-charge general action. It's not. You can charge. Holy crap. That ability is so much better than
Do
I
you
thought.
remember when I walked in and I was like, hey, bro, guess what you forgot? And you were like, what? And I was like, all of your free charges all day. And you were like, what?
Yep.
And then I showed you the card.
And the other thing is that I was forgetting to, like, I kept using the archivist's ability to do deafening silence to leap, and I forgot the deafening silence actually has rules text, like it actually does something. So I was not making him discard cards to avalanche me. He didn't do it very often, but he should have been discarded. It doesn't matter. The point is, I was playing this crew a little sloppy because I'm not familiar with it. But what ultimately ended up happening was a Calypso visited all the stations of the cross, got all my 4 strategy points. Research mission was not that hard because I was dropping webs, he was dropping ice pillars. There were strategy markers everywhere. I was scheming. There were it was really easy to score. Although he had a very smart play at the end of the game where he dropped an ice pillar using Euripides bonus action to AoE remove pillars so that I wasn't able to score the second half of research mission. In retrospect, I'm not sure if that would have worked because that is a pulse that requires line of sight. And at this point, he had, I think, 7 or 8 ice pillars in a really big thicket. And I think that they would have blocked line of sight to each, at least to each other or to my scheme marker, which he removed. But again, like I said, doesn't really matter. So he was able to have a very smart play there, and he was also able to move Euripides himself into contact with the center marker so that he could score a second strategy point. So he ended up scoring 2 for the strategy, 1 for research mission because he did end the board or end the turn with Euripides being close to a strategy marker, a scheme marker, and a ice pillar marker. So that was that. So it ended up being, I think it should have been 6-3, but I'm not certain. But ultimately, what it came down to was I was just able to jam him so hard that his Gigants, I don't think either of them ever threw a rock. Euripides made 1 attack with his Etheric Gaze. The big thing that my crew is weak to with that list is the amount of AoE damage it does, and I just jammed him so hard he wasn't able to do any.
Yeah, I've done that before with Cadmus too. And you lead off, or at least I like to lead off with like really closely deploying the initial 2 totems and just trying to tie up, and then like jam in from a relatively safe distance and just sprinkle drain lives at people until they die.
The other thing is that he was doing the old ways a lot, which meant he had some amazing flips. Like, I mean, he old ways a red Joker once. At one point, he had a single 12 as the only card in his discard pile, and he was able to old ways on it like 3 times in a row. So that was fun for me. But he was doing a ton of damage to his own crew. So when I say I killed these Cyclopses, I mean like they were already at like 5 health, and I just sort of poked them and they fell over. And the fact that also there's quite a few infect triggers in my crew means that I was able to knock them to hard to kill and then forget about them because the poison was going to do my job for me.
Yeah.
So I think that this was an interesting matchup. I think that the way the game played out favored me very strongly because it was a melee scrum in which he was doing a lot of damage to himself. I think if he had been able, if the pool had allowed him to hang back and play a more ranged game, it would have maybe been a bit more difficult for me because my crew is very squishy and dies to AoE very easily.
Yeah, you could have locked
But
because those they have the ability to ignore line of sight, especially
right,
with their
but they are
AoEs.
also only range 8.
Yeah.
It's a very short range gun. But Euripides has that range, like effectively range 20 gun. So,
Yeah.
whatever, that's fair. So my takeaways from that, Hepatomancy is busted good as an ability. Savage has still got really good card manipulation. The combination of Hepatomancy and Old Ways is very strong because if you know exactly what you're going to flip and you can know what your opponent's going to flip, you can know in advance before anyone flips a card whether you're going to win the duel, succeed the duel or not, which means your hand is not being very pressured at all. And there are not very many abilities in that crew that require you to discard a card. So he was able to just save his whole hand for just big cheats and really come in clutch with those cheats. And he was winning. I think in terms of opposed duels, he won like a big majority of the opposed duels on the board. But ultimately, I was just able to like use AP to convert them to points very effectively in a way he was not able to do because he was just boxed out.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I watched like the second half of that game,
Mhm.
and only stepped away to take pictures and stuff because you guys are both my friends and you were playing for the win. So it was an
Yeah.
interesting game to watch. I guess my question would be, you know, any core takeaways on two things. One of them, what are your thoughts in general now on Gaining Grounds 2 in general, having played a bunch of tournaments? We're kind of on the cusp of moving into Gaining Grounds 3 here, so things you like about the Gaining Grounds 2 format, things you might like to see out of GG3, and then also, since it's your first real tournament with them, thoughts on Explorer Society.
All
You
right,
can
so I'll
jump
start
around.
with the first one. I like GG2. I think it's a good setting. I think it is showing its age a little bit. Fortunately, we didn't have any symbols maps. I think right now the biggest problem in GG2 is symbols of authority because it's very polarizing, and especially with some deployment zones, it's really unfun, like especially corner deployment. I think I would like it a lot more if the rule said you could not place a marker within 6 inches of a board edge. That would really, to me, make it a lot more fun. Um, I think there are some schemes I don't love. Outflank is a little blah. It's kind of very AP intensive. There's a people tend to bring small elite crews because there are a lot of ways to punish somebody for having lots of weak significant models. Turf War punishes you for that. Um, breakthrough, not breakthrough. Like not hidden martyrs. Vendetta. Vendetta punishes you for that. Catch and release really wants you to have minions, but there are a lot of crews with terrible minions, and so it's kind of weird. Like, like if you're playing EVS, you got these machinists, which are fine, and then you've got like what? Like maybe botanists are kind of crap in EVS because you can't really feed them. They're also I think botanists are a bit overrated, but they're still fine. But you don't have like you're not gonna play harpooners, because harpooners are just bad. Um, what do you like? What do you have? What are you going to score catch and release with? So, you know, I think that's just sort of something that's like on my mind. I think that I'd like to see a wider variety of models become useful. I think I'd also like to see abilities that require you to drop scheme markers near the enemy become more relevant. Right now, the only reason to drop scheme markers near an enemy model is detonate charges, which is not really a scheme marker scheme. It's an activation control scheme. It's a scheme that really wants you to get last activation. And the other one is bait and switch, which is very rare that you take because I don't think it's a very good scheme. It's too many conditions. So the other thing that I would think of that I'd like to see is I'd like to see more schemes that trigger mid-turn rather than end of turn because end of turn triggering schemes really reward just like sandbagging, getting last activation, snatching those like before some model has activated kills to get activation control, generating pass tokens. I think that's can be fun. It's a reasonable gameplay element, and I don't want them all to go away. But I would like to see more schemes you can score in the middle of the turn. Like one of the reasons I really like deathbeds is yeah, you have to drop a scheme marker near an enemy model, but because you can score it in the middle of the turn, it's much more dynamic. Like your opponent can't just like be like, oh, he's telegraphed his scheme. Now I have between now and the end of the turn to do something about it. Your opponent has to do something about it now because otherwise they're just going to kill their model and score it. So I'd like to see more schemes that trigger mid turn. That's the big change.
Yeah, that makes sense, and that's so different than end of turn scoring.
Yeah.
It
Not
really,
all of them. Some should be end of turn, maybe even most, but there should be more than like one that's mid turn.
yeah, that's reasonable. Oh, and so I
It's
guess
not just, but
it's I guess we should let people know how the tournament ended up. So you ended up winning,
Mhm.
and we had another one of our friendly locals who actually is on Team Danger Planet and kind of travels under that banner and goes to tournaments with both you and me and travels with us. So shout out to Rich. Rich got second place, running
Mhm.
Outcasts,
With
and
Levy 2 games.
yeah, the man is a legend. He
To
basically
be
I
fair, I actually think Levy 2 is an awfully bad matchup for Jackdaw, and he ran to Jackdaw around 3 because your whole crew is willpower 7, movement 7. Like that's the stat Jackdaw attacks.
Yeah, but come on, like the dude's a legend. He literally was like, I talked to him before the day, like, and I was like, "What's on
Mhm.
your mind, man? What are you gonna run?" And he's like, "Horses," and I
Yeah,
was like,
no, I'm not taking anything away from Rich. That man rules.
"Yeah," like he did it with just like, "I'm gonna do it with horses," and the man did it. So props to Rich. You know, all the love in the world to him. Good job, buddy. And then Adam got third,
Mhm.
because his only loss was to you in that final.
Yep.
So his record now in the last 3 tournaments he's played is win third, which is pretty good.
Yeah,
But we already knew that Adam was a good player, so
he's very good.
yeah.
So my thoughts on ES. I love ES. I really do. I think they're in a great place right now. I think there was a lot of knee-jerk reaction when they first got nerfed. And I think it was wholly undeserved. I think ES is in a really good place right now. They're very competitive. I think they have two absolutely top-tier masters in Cadmus 2 and Maxine 2. And I didn't play Maxine 2 today, but I easily could have. She's great. I think Jedza 2 is extremely competitive. I think Cooper 2 is extremely competitive. I do think that they are lacking somewhat in their first version masters. I think that with the nerfs to Ivan and Nexus, which were richly deserved, there aren't that many original version ES masters that I'm super excited to play. Um, I don't think original version McCabe is terrible, but I think he's much better in 10 Thunders than he is in ES. And I think also McCabe 2 is just a lot of fun and really good. So I might pick him up at some point, although I think once I'm done with Cadmus, Apex might be my next keyword. I think they suffer from the fact that they have a lot of duds. There are a lot of really like every keyword has at least one like dud model, I think. Um, and they also don't have great uh like they don't have great versatile minions or like out of keyword minions that you'll hire that often. So like the out of keyword hires are pretty strong when it's henchmen and enforcers, but like what ES minion are you gonna hire out of keyword?
Actually, what was really interesting that I was listening today too, um,
Mhm.
it was on Breachburnt, the podcast. I like those guys. They actually are really interesting discussions. But they were talking about taking operatives out of keyword in order to combat terrifying. And even out of keyword, they're only 6 points because I think they're 5 points flat.
Yeah, the thing is, like, I like operatives. I think they're cute. I don't think they're good at combating terrifying because okay, so let's think about this.
Yeah, they're
What is the
stat
problem
four.
with
Their weapon
terrifying?
is like a stat four or
Yeah.
something. I think.
If
Yeah.
also, you know what's really good to take out of keyword to combat terrifying? Berserker husks. They're ruthless. They're stat 6. They're really good.
Yeah. Or not even out of
So
keyword. Just play Cadmus too.
yeah, or just play chemistry. I like operatives. I think they're cute. I think that they are a tech pick for certain schemes. Arson is very strong in certain scheme pools. I also think it's really hilarious that's like sometimes just randomly they get to steal your opponent's insanely powerful buffs.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Dude, that ability is wild and really
yeah,
turns some games
infiltrator.
upside down. Yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty good in that respect. They have some really neat stuff like that. I don't think that they are necessarily like something I'd hire out of keyword. But I do like ES a lot. I think that ES is pretty cool. I think they are a faction with some pretty good, well-defined strengths and weaknesses. They have good card draw. Um, they have, pretty good range damage. They don't really have good melee beaters. That's fine. They have marker removal. They aren't necessarily super maneuverable outside of McCabe. Although I think Cadmus is very, very maneuverable. So maybe I'll retract that one because they are pretty maneuverable. So they have
And
some
Max
things that
2.
they're good
I
at.
mean, Max 2
Yeah.
can get some
Yeah, no,
crazy.
I'll retract that a bit. I think their willpower tends to be pretty bad.
Yeah, but they also have
Um,
a really, really, really good willpower defense piece in Vernon and Wells.
yes. That is very much true. I think they also have they're not the best defensively, but they have an incredibly good defensive emissary, so that helps.
Yeah. They've got
Um,
pieces to get around it. But yeah, in general, they've got a soft, squishy nougat center. I agree with you.
so yeah, I just have really enjoyed playing with the faction. I'm going to continue playing them. I mean, when I'm next month, the EVS infamous box comes out, and I'm going to be in heaven because I love all those models.
Fishbacher and Tentacle Grandma.
I'm even going to try Zip too. I've got thoughts on him.
Dude, shout out to Felly, the aforementioned Felly, your round 2 opponent. He was the first man in our local meta to bring forth the gospel of Tentacle Grandma. So all the love in the world to Felly. I freaking love playing Max too.
Yeah, she's so good.
Yeah, I played her at my last local, and I came in 3rd soloing her. And I basically learned to play her by playing against you and having you wreck me with her, and also have Felly slap me around with the Tentacle Grandma. So, yeah, shout out to him on that.
All right. Well, that was the tournament. It was a lot of fun. Thanks for recording and for helping set it up. This was a great tournament. Yeah, once again, we played with your gorgeous terrain, and I had a really good time.
Yeah, so keep a tab on the channel, guys. You're going to see a lot more tournament coverage from us. You're going to see a bunch of stuff coming up on actually our narrative league, which is going to be both in person and digital. Really, the only requirement for participation is that you just post the results on our Discord, and we're going to tabulate it and keep track of it on a narrative map and have fan fiction written actually by Sam himself. So keep a track on that, guys. You can visit us in our Discord, and we'd be happy to explain a whole bunch more about it because we're really, really excited for it. And Sam and I also have a couple boards that we're making for our local game store around it too, which is going to be a fun project. So
yeah,
have a good time, guys. Good luck to everybody. Keep on the grind, and we will see you both later, or see everybody later. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hope you had a good time. I have some prizes and stuff to give out. So the first and most important thing, I think, is the Malifaux World Championship belt, which for the first time is being signed by somebody who's not Jesse. That's Sam.
Because Jesse's not here.
Yeah. Jesse's not here.
Fuck you, son. I'll get him. Cross his name out.
Also, unfortunately, we can't put a buying poster up, or any poster up, because today is the 18th, 6/18/22.
You can wear it next time, right?
And